Why, hello, everyone. It's a much smaller panel than normal. Today, in episode 41 of You Had Me at Halo, where we've all been playing a lot of Elden Rings and Souls games, and we're going to say, how could Halo learn from this? I am joined, as always, by the incredible Aarsal, a.k.a. Soulblazerz. How are you?
Yo, pretty good.
As well as Dan, the Catman Knottian. How's it going?
Pretty good, guys. That was a great intro.
All right, and our best wishes go out to Abe, who's running into a little family thing. He's got a sick kitty cat that he's trying to get taken care of. So put them in your thoughts and your prayers.
Yeah. Indeed.
But getting to the rigmarole, everything. What have you been playing lately, Aarsal? I've got one guess. DuckTales.
You'd probably get it wrong, actually. Wait, what was the guess?
It was DuckTales.
The very last game I played was not DuckTales.
Oh, okay.
Nor was it Elden Ring. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What was it?
I did a quick map run while we were talking pre-show for Path of Exile.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
That is the one. I've tried to get into that one so many times, and I just can't. I've tried.
It's weird. Usually when I get into it, I get like wrist pain. This time I'm not, so it's a good sign.
Are you playing on PC or
PC? Yeah, only PC. I can't play the game on console. No way.
No. How about you, Dan? What have you been up to lately?
Aside from working a ton, so I started Elden Ring and loved it actually, but it's because work has been so stressful. I like a warm, comfy blanket, so I started playing Dark Souls 1 again, the remastered. That's been actually really, really great. It's practice so I can get good for Elden Ring, and
that's the funny thing. Elden Ring, I find so much is, if you're banging your head against the wall in the older Souls games, you just had to either grind one little area and level up, or just bang your head until you got good.
Yeah.
But with Elden Ring, you just turn around and you go in the other direction, and then you get stronger by doing other things.
Yeah, and from my experience with Elden Ring, like the reason I go back to DS1 is not only just because it's like there's a lot of attachment there for me because of what was going on at the time when it came out and all that jazz, but the other thing is I have a theory that if you can get good, quote unquote, with that game, the rest are considerably easier because a lot of the difficulty for DS1, it's the same that exists in all of them, right? It's about enemy memorization, attack memorization, tactics, all that kind of jazz.
Don't panic.
But DS1 had a ton of horrible hitbox issues and movement, invisible wall, like all these things that don't, in my experience at least with Elden Ring, doesn't really exist in modern ones. It's the same with Sekiro, right? Like it didn't. They kind of fixed a lot of their engine issues and their physics and their collision detection and whatnot. So that's why I think if you can be good with that one, you're probably good for the rest of the series and the rest of the Souls-like games. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, obviously I played a ton of Elden Ring, did the review for the site, and after that I jumped into a little bit of Destiny 2, which I've been streaming. The Witch Queen seems very good in the early going so far, and also I've been playing, but I can't say exactly anything about it, Young Souls, which is coming to Game Pass on the 10th, so I'm playing that for a review. Keep an eye out on that. But Elden Ring really is the big thing in gaming. Yeah. Everywhere right now. It's sold insane amounts of copies. Far more. It's already outsold what they had hoped to get for the entire month of March.
Right.
Like twice to three times over, most likely. Everyone's watching it. Everyone's streaming it. Everyone's talking about it. And I think it's one of the best games ever made. It has severe issues with performance. The PvP just doesn't work because the servers are so bogged down.
I'm sure
game. We're not expecting.
Yeah, I was going to say PvP has always been
it's bad normally, but a lot of times it's just bad and broken, and people hack you on the PC and all this.
Right.
But this one, the servers can't handle it because there's so many people playing as well. Actually, on top of all the normal issues.
I got summoned to help someone today. I just chased him downstairs, hit him, clearly missed. Takes a big chunk of damage, hit again, clearly missed. He messages me afterwards, or they message me. They're like, "Yo, what happened?" That's from PvP for you.
The co-op worked fine when I did it with my brother, but that was before launch.
I co-opted just yesterday, and no problems.
That seems way better than the PvP because they're not as stringent with trying to make it accurate in hits.
Right.
But we look at Elden Ring and we wonder, what could Halo Infinite's future PvE content, which there was actually also something that popped up that I found on True Achievements, where they reported it, where there are job listings talking about future Halo content that we'll get into after this. So from my side of things, the main thing about Elden Ring, and it's very different from Halo, is no checklists. Like I said in my review, if Halo Infinite is my favorite checklist open world, the very Ubisoft style, but Halo was actually more Rage, Rage 2.
Yep. 100%.
Like you've got these things, you can go and do them if you want. They'll make you better, but you don't have to. You can just follow this easy to understand path. So everything is in a list and you always know what to do.
Right.
But Elden Ring is very different in the sense that nothing is ever clear outside of you are pointed in a general direction or told something decently clear. A huge hint for people that don't play Souls games very often. Look at every item description. Everything new you get, even pieces of gear, anything, always look at the item description because that's where like 90% of the game's storytelling is. And giving you hints on where to go and what things do and whatnot. Halo made it very clear, had impeccable gameplay, excellent balance, and Elden Ring isn't about that. The gameplay is good. The balance is there for you to break. That's like half the fun. Figuring out. So like when you got like Dan, when you look at it, when you look at well, from your limited time with Elden Ring, but just the concept of what that is. This big open world that doesn't tell you, what do you think they could bring to Halo like DLC?
Yeah, so for the record, I've put in about probably 4 hours of Elden Ring, which is like, as we all know, like stepping, wading very slowly in the water.
It's not a ton for knowing the whole game, but you know how the layout.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have an idea.
And Abe and I have talked about this a little bit, and a couple other of us on one of our channels about, Elden Ring. It doesn't really, like, if you've played Xenoblade Chronicles, there's a lot of similarities in terms of scope, in terms of breadth, in terms of like this encouragement of discovery. But the beauty about Elden Ring is that there are, like you said, Jesse, there's no checkpoints, there's no checklists, there's no markers on your map, and it's refreshing in a way that I don't think most, like, when there were some people that tweeted before the game came out, like, hey, don't expect to have a waypoint or whatever like you see in most of these other games. And I'm like, yeah, but that's how Souls games always are. But the beauty of introducing that into an open world is that it's almost evolutionary, because you don't have, like, your movement forward is based on your own urge to discover, and I think Halo Infinite, I'm with you, Jesse. I think I absolutely loved Rage 2, and I think that comparison to Infinite is completely apropos, and it's probably my favorite type of open world game of that kind, where you do have some guiding force, where you do have some of those activities that are repeats around the map to unlock things. But I think maybe for DLC, when we start encroaching in other areas of the ring, it would be great if there were no checkpoint or no waypoints. If it were just like Elden Ring, where it says, okay, you're dropped here, you kind of know what you need to do, but we're going to encourage you to, or even maybe not in the main campaign expansions, but if we, we'll talk about later with PvE options, like if they introduce some sort of ODST 4-player PvE against like the Flood and the Palace of Pain or whatever, like, it just drops you and you explore on your own, and your sense of urgency and discovery is what brings you forward. Because with Halo CE, right, that's the one everybody always says, hey, it's got a lot of mystery. A lot of the mystery, as we've all argued, stems from the fact that they didn't really have the narrative pieces together. Well, now they do, but they could probably pare back a little bit on the the guidelines of how you move forward, and I think it might bring some of that back without needing to create a whole new system. Just kind of go in with just your HUD, no waypoints, no guides, no checklists, and see what happens. Because I think the best thing about Elden Ring is that I also, this is going to be a hot take, I'm not a huge Breath of the Wild fan, even though I've beaten every single Zelda before it. I have literally every copy of every freaking Zelda since one on NES. So before anybody
Amen, dude.
says
Same position.
Yeah, before anybody says I'm not a fan or whatever, I'm a hater. Like Breath of the Wild was
Breath
just
of the Wild was the Ubisoft style, right? Except for they just didn't show you the checklist, but it was still a checklist game.
Exactly. Like there weren't, I mean, the quote unquote dungeons were just, the Korok seeds, the towers. I mean, that's literally ripped from an Ubisoft game. And I mean, this idea that game, like this to me, ultimately, what I would say is Elden Ring does what people claim Breath of the Wild did, which is, it brings you this open world game. It changes what, Elden Ring isn't a continuation of Dark Souls, but it is a from game built in that vein, right? And it changes how that entire paradigm, it's a paradigm shift, right? And so it's bringing a whole new type of play to a familiar game while still giving you this open world to truly discover without literally, because that's the other thing too. Breath of the Wild also had markers, right? It also had waypoints. Like you chose which story quest or side quest you were doing, and it literally told you where to go. This doesn't do that, and it does everything that people claim Breath of the Wild does in spades, I think. So
I could definitely agree with that.
I've loved every.
I know Aarsal's with us when it comes to Zelda.
Breath of the Wild. Oh God, I tried it. I think 3 or 4 times. Literally, I'm a huge Zelda fan. My profile picture's linked. Come on, like this is the best Zelda game ever, right?
Yep.
Let's play it. And it's like, God, it's boring. You know, like I don't need, but I'd like some direction. Also, not having like the motivation of having like proper temples or like dungeons is kind of like sad. Yeah. I'm like, come on, it's a Zelda game. The core is there, Anyways, to Elden Ring, I feel like to bring it back to Halo, and this honestly confuses me about Elden Ring because I don't know how they did it. Like, how did they make something like this in terms of content? How the hell is this game as content packed as it is? Because it's ridiculous. I think I'm relatively far in. An entire area opens. I'm like, okay, this is one of the main 4 bosses. So there's 4 areas like this. Nope. Turns out the entire area, including the last boss in that area, is some random optional fight. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then they keep doing it. This feels like a game that should have taken like 5-6 years to make, to me. And it does not look like it took that long. Like Red Dead, I can understand why it's as big as it is. It took literally 7-8 years to make, I think, and like a full team, a bunch of crunch, everything going nonstop. With this, I guess maybe they knew what they were doing, they knew their strengths, and they played it right. So if I want Halo to take one thing from that, it's that, right? Like they took what they learned from Sekiro, they took what they learned from previous Dark Souls games, and they kind of just put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, From is incredibly efficient because they've already got the foundation. Like they don't reinvent the wheel. Pretty much, I mean, you can play Elden Ring and go back to DS1, and it's basically the same play style. I
mean, I literally play the exact same. I have the same sword in all 3 of my Dark Souls games. I use the same sword, the same exact play style.
That's awesome. But yeah, so
I mean, it serves as like a potential roadmap. Which it serves as a potential way that they can, because if this ends up being a long-term, their 10-year plan ends up being, roughly 10 years, the entire generation, Halo Infinite constantly being built upon, we know how the PvP will go. Yeah, they've got a really good foundation. They're going to add to it. They'll add modes. They'll add maps. Like where that's coming from. They'll have season passes. That within 3 years there'll be a bajillion maps. Hopefully they don't go crazy and they go for
bunch of cosmetics, numerous new weapons in the sandbox.
Thousands of cosmetics. Yeah. We know all that. So the PvE side is a lot more interesting to me because I think a lot of people really want it after how fun that campaign is. Everyone's going to want the grapple shot. Even if it's ODST, they got to figure out a way to let ODSTs have a grapple shot. is why personally I think if they do something that's not Chief, it'll be your multiplayer Spartan.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll go with much else for the main part.
It makes sense
Maybe
too, given
in
I was gonna say it makes sense given that they've built cinematics for multiplayer. When have they ever done that before?
Yeah.
I think they're trying to your point, Jesse. I think they're really trying to encourage people to make their Spartan their own Spartan because they're eventually going to be using that outside of just multiplayer.
And I have 3 Spartans for each mode. Is what I those 3 like suit armor things. Depending on what I'm playing, I use a different one because it's kind of like in my head.
It's awesome.
So like especially once and that does come down to as well with the whole roadmap issue. And for anything like this from a game like Elden Ring, we may be interested in pulling things from the base fact is it would take a while to ever get implemented.
Yeah.
So like what they have now, I wouldn't be shocked if it. So they've shown off in the original trailer last July when they had July in 2020, the shorter one after the gameplay demo, and you see offensive biases, 3 eyes there.
Right.
You know, there's areas they built. We've seen sand stuff in the multiplayer. I imagine any immediate future content that's going to start Chief would be probably in that area. I do wonder because there is 1 Spartan left, I believe, from all the ones that are going to be in the upcoming book, which is coming next month, I think, or no, May.
March. Or
Coming
was it May or
within
March?
a few. Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it
was March. I'm gonna double check.
Yeah, so the next book that's coming is like the backstory of all the Spartans you find during the campaign. So it could potentially be our multiplayer guys meeting up with them or something like that. You could go backwards to when everything's just happening and you're playing as them, in which case nothing's been set up. That would be more of an Elden Ring map type situation where there are no bases.
That'd be cool.
There is nothing to go. Instead, you could go and search and try to, or even just any part of the ring that we end up going to with Chief, with a different character. Anywhere you go that isn't already set up is prime to just have this thing where you go out and explore and start taking things, start taking control of things, still fighting the Banished and any other enemies there may be. I mean, we're many months past the Halo campaign being out, so any new foes that you're fighting against, that's why I was looking whenever I was playing Elden Ring and I'm thinking of Halo Infinite, what they might have done, like how many assets that they cut that are ready to be fine-tuned and added into things to take their sandbox of toys and, mold some fancy new castles out of them. I think they've got it there. It's just we never know what state everything is at, what plans they had already. And I do think anything that would be taken from Elden Ring at first would be small, but as they go forward throughout the years, that's when you can really see it making an impact.
As a bit of a not a counterpoint per se, but I feel like you're right in that anything they would take is small, and I'm not sure if I want them to really go the whole Elden Ring route of like no direction, nothing, right? Because it works for Elden Ring. Definitely didn't work for Breath of the Wild, for example. And that's like a massive shift in design. I feel like it might be better for them to focus on their strengths because I still really enjoyed Halo Infinite. It was a checkbox system, but it was contained enough that I didn't feel overwhelmed. Like I played an Assassin's Creed game, I opened up the map and I'm like, what the heck? No, thank you. And
Which one?
Origins was the last time that happened.
Okay. Pretty much anything.
It's funny. In Odyssey, wasn't it? They introduced the no waypoint mode.
Yes,
they just
discovery
use
mode.
a direction and you go,
Right.
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
maybe I'll try when I eventually play Odyssey. Even though I buy every goddamn Assassin's Creed game right now, the entire franchise is on sale. And if I didn't own all of them, I would have bought something.
Up through Black Flag was like from 1 to Black Flag. It was my favorite franchise of last generation.
Yeah.
But
back to
a few
Halo.
missteps.
Yeah. I mean, Brotherhood. You can't play 2 Brotherhood and Revelations back to back. That's a little too much.
Yeah, I did. Like
Really?
I was. Oh man. Yeah. That's a discussion for another time. But yeah.
But back to Halo for a bit. I feel like I was mentioning this earlier, but I won 3 for 3 to look at Elden Ring, and to take from it is like the superficial crap means nothing. Elden Ring,
Right.
for all accounts, is not the best looking game ever. The specific models are kind of crappy looking. The attack animations, a lot of them are reused. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter because they did what they had and they just did something really good with it. Halo Infinite was a great campaign, in my opinion, a solid core campaign with a few major complaints like lack of diversity. And I get it, right? It's like that one biome. I want Infinite to just take what they have and like really fine tune it, make it better, make less repeating bases, even if they're slightly different. You know, maybe add a few more toys to play with, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so on the forums, I posted a Twitter thread from Nick Popovich, and it was basically discussing the misconceptions that gamers have about the cadence of content release and how long it takes to actually make that content. And I think it's an important point for everybody to read. I think if they don't have any idea of how
It's
games
linked
work,
in
Hopefully they can understand it if they read it.
yeah, hopefully they can understand it. But it's one of those things that, you know, we talk about all the cut content. Every game has cut content.
Yep.
But with Infinite, they have a unique opportunity because they hopefully are planning on, you know, not just chief PvE expansions, but a firefight mode or like what we were
Spartan
talking
Ops or
about, like
something.
some sort of Spartan Ops where you're taking your Spartan into new areas of the ring. And I hope that they, you know, implement some of those biomes that we saw, you know, that we know is there, and some of that cut content that we know is there. I hope they apply that because they already have those assets. And it would just it would save a lot of time.
You're right. I mean, remember the Ori 2 trailer? Initially they had that little railway section once, right? And it was just cut content, never ended up making it.
Oh,
Never
yeah,
ended up making
we
it
talked
anymore.
about it with Thomas on the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, I
It was
remember that
mainly
podcast.
they couldn't make it fun. Is
Yeah.
why it got cut.
Yeah.
But like what I'm saying is like a regular game cuts the content and it's just cut. It's gone, right?
It's
No one's
gone
gonna go
forever.
make Dark Souls 1 again and put all that cut content back in. Halo Infinite has that unique opportunity where it's like, hey, we couldn't get this working on time. Let's reuse this stuff.
Well, funnily enough, I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of concepts in Elden Ring are things that they had thought of and couldn't make work previously.
Yeah,
I can definitely see
oh,
that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Like the horseback riding feels right out of Sekiro for some reason. I don't know why. You don't ride a horse in Sekiro. It just feels.
No, but you see enemies that do, and
Yes,
I think that's
yes.
the mechanics came from. You're absolutely spot on. I think we've seen like that was their petri dish for testing, you know, and then
That makes a lot of sense.
That's where they get stealth and
yeah,
a
like, crouch in a Dark Souls
they
game.
took little things. Yeah,
that's so funny.
It's so much a
dedicated
Souls
jump
game,
button.
but you see that little DNA of Sekiro with jumping, horses, and stealth and crouching and stuff. Like you see the parts that they like. This will work in this.
Yeah. I molded so well to Elden Ring's new systems, like stealth, like jumping, that when I went back to DS1, I was like, "What the hell? I forgot I can't do this." You know, it's like, damn.
Speaking of, I remember when Sekiro came out, I bought it day one, and I'm like, "Holy crap, this game is hard! I'm gonna go play something a little more relaxing." I switched to Bloodborne. I'm like, I'll just switch between the two of them. Ended up just replaying the entirety of Bloodborne instead. And then a year later, I played Sekiro. Oh man,
yeah.
So, and speaking of all this future content stuff, there was reporting by Sean Carey over at TrueAchievements.com. Oh, God, and thank you, Predrag, for your incredible transition animations.
Oh, that's
probably full screen that. So, Halo Infinite multiplayer might be getting seasonal story content in the future. A new job listing from 343 Industries suggests that Halo Infinite's free-to-play multiplayer could be getting some story-based content soon. In terms of narrative, Halo Infinite's multiplayer doesn't have any other than the game's brief tutorial. But going on here, they look at a job listing from 343, and the developer is looking to hire a writing director to create highly innovative and engaging serial narrative content for Halo Infinite's free-to-play. So this is an interesting way, because we always think of it in the more traditional campaign sense. But if it is your free-to-play character going into a narrative in PvE content, keeping that free-to-play makes sense for them. And the only paid expansions are probably huge ones for Chief.
Right.
That makes
and
a lot of sense.
I imagine Forge would also be free and free to play because it's so tied to multiplayer.
Yeah.
Where their real monetization is just customization and I bet you even the campaign expansions would end up in Game Pass. But like those would be the two things you buy with Halo. But everything tied to that multiplayer Spartan whose story they want you to build feels really tied to the entire free to play philosophy.
Yeah, and it makes sense too because if they're going to go that route, they've already diverged the teams between PvP and PvE, right? So having the balance and having your character and everything that entails being attributed to the typical traditionally PvP team suggests that it's probably going to be something closer to Spartan Ops or something like that, which is fine. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me is I've realized how much I'm not so much of a PvP player these days. I look at my time in Halo 5 and the vast majority of it was either campaign or firefight.
So you didn't have 2,000 hours of Halo 5 multiplayer?
I did not.
You didn't have a dev friend you played with all the time? Yeah.
I also
had to get a
didn't.
trifecta in there. Okay.
But I think having something like this where it's a serial narrative and it is strictly focused on maybe Spartan Ops or something of that similar size, I think alleviates the need and the pressure on the campaign teams to have to constantly put out something every season, right? I think that's unrealistic. I think people who are expecting that kind of thing,
even every year, dude, like
even every year, if people are wanting to have these meaty expansions, that's just you got to be realistic, especially while we are still majority work from home. But I think having those smaller Spartan Op type events for your multiplayer Spartan would be ideal. It's kind of a stopgap, but it's also a great way to actually enjoy said content with your friends.
One thing I never thought of, and that article made a good point, was any PvE content that's multiplayer focused, anything like Firefight or Spartan Ops even, is going to be free to play.
Yep.
Previously, it was always tied under, right? So I kind of assumed any kind of like you're versing an AI is campaign based. It's paid, right? Like internally, it's what I thought. That's going to be a relatively big deal. I feel. I'm trying to think, what other free to play games do they have like PvE content? Like, does Fortnite have like a free mode where like
Apex? If they do,
yeah,
a lot of Fortnites end up being like community based or built in their stuff, and Apex is the one I've seen that's had the most like sort of PvE ish. But even then, it's tied into their. It's tied into their PvP normally.
Okay.
About it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, unless they make they sold zombies separately. They did not make it free.
Exactly. Zombies wasn't free to play, right? That would be my go-to comparison, but it's not. Or any kind of horde mode in a game is not free.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's part of the paid campaign. So that's gonna be an interesting touch.
I think Halo Infinite is in a unique position as well because typically, Halo has set the bar for so many games to in the same way that From's games have set the bar for Souls-like, right? You think about the regenerating health, you think about the 2-weapon system, etc. It's those all stem from Halo, and I think this time Halo, I mean, not just the fact that the campaign is kind of branching out in this semi-open world hybrid, but I think a lot of the innovations are platform wise. They're structural, like the free to play multiplayer, the like you said, Aarsal, the free to play AI PvE systems that we don't know. Obviously, we don't know the form yet, but if they're Spartan Ops or Firefight or a combination thereof, that is relatively unique in the FPS, big budget shooter space. So
yeah, because the only thing that's close creation wise is some of the stuff in Fortnite, but that's really limited in comparison to what they're looking at with Forge. And like Battlefield 2042 had the scripting for setting things up in their modes, but there was no map building, and it's not free to play.
It's not free to play. I mean, I'm thinking about
somehow full price.
Yeah, like League or Dota, they have every once in a while like these mini games, these modes that are like you're up against an AI, but like they're never like that in depth. They're more just like other things people to do because they're tired of playing the same map for about 10 years. By the way, just saying. Anyways, I never thought of that in the sense where it's like they're clearly gonna add free to play content with your Spartan, right? Because that first cutscene you play when you do the tutorial, it's not there for no reason, right? It's clearly establishing that this is gonna be a staple in this game.
And it's tied directly into the campaign.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I never really tied together the fact that that's completely free to play, while the campaign isn't. So it's kind of
It's
like
paradigm.
yeah, huh? We never talked about it either.
The
before. I feel like we
other
probably should have.
part of that article was that they're also looking to recruit a monetization designer. Sort of we messed up monetization for quite a while. So who wants to come in here and help us keep fixing
I actually
it?
bought something 2 weeks ago, I think, for the first time on the store. The
Broken
little
Halo?
the broken Halo, it's like $3. I'm like, what the hell? Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
right. I still haven't. I don't think I have.
And the cat ears are apparently coming back next week. If they're under 5,
Mhm.
I might consider it, or 5 or under. Let's say.
Monetization is weird because I don't
They're
think
selling stuff.
Yeah, they're selling
Yep.
stuff, and it's that I don't know the economics on this whatsoever. So quote me as talking out of my ass, but it is funny because my Catherine and I play a lot of Fallout 76, and the prices in there for the Atomic Shop can be somewhat reasonable to just like outlandish. And you look, I mean, that's kind of the same across the board. So I still don't think that that's something that anybody really has a great grasp on, the value, because
Yeah.
obviously, like, those assets take time to make. They cost money for developers to make, and it's not just building the assets. You also have to test the assets in lighting. You have to test the assets in collision detection, etc., etc. So there's I definitely value the work that goes into that.
And the release kind of piecemeal, right? So say you're making like a full force Halo game and you have like 160 helmets or something like that. Who cares if like 20 of them look terrible or just aren't, up to
Right.
par? You're releasing them 5, 6 at a time, and it's suddenly more like, whoa, no, the focus now on each the individual piece we're releasing, right?
I mean, and for what it's worth, as we mentioned Destiny earlier, Jesse, and I don't know if it's changed in the past 9 months because I haven't played in 9 months, but the cost per item and also the skeeviness of advertising items that were not in your battle pass but you had to pay for. I mean, I definitely think that the Halo system isn't as bad as that.
Well, it inherently doesn't have the FOMO issues that Destiny has, because after 3 months, you spent $10 on that battle pass, and if you don't max it out in those 3 months, you can't get those items. Where Halo intrinsically has a better system because you have forever. When you buy that item, it doesn't go away until the game's gone.
Oh yeah, even stuff in the Eververse though. I mean, the value of your bright dust or your silver versus the item itself just seems a little bit skewed.
It's
the
whole bright dust is an earnable one in game, and silver is the
sense.
one you buy stuff with.
Yeah.
They've moved it around and changed it a lot, and the bright dust feels fine. You get enough now, but the silver is still, if you want to spend $50, you can look pretty cool, and people do it. I see it all the time when I'm playing with people.
Quickly for just a few items.
It's a really fine line in an MMO. In Halo, it's multiplayer, and the armor is like, it's free to play. The armor is whatever. In MMO, it's that armor is like something you're acquiring, right?
And you can see it quite often on yourself in Destiny when you can't ever. Outside of being in a vehicle, you're not seeing yourself in Halo.
What I mean is, like, say you buy Witch Queen, right? And like you get this cool armor, but then all the coolest armor is locked behind the battle pass. And it's like, dude, I already bought something. Why can't I get the coolest armor there?
No, the way see, that was my point, Aarsal. And it's even worse than that, because it's not just that it's locked behind it's not even that it's locked behind the battle pass. It's that they advertise all these armor sets that aren't in your battle pass, nor are they part of that expansion that you bought. They are part of the Eververse shop, where you have to spend additional real money to be able to even get that said advertised
It's
armor.
it's the
That's
thing that Halo tried to get away from when they
Yeah, they got
accidentally
lambasted.
showed the wrong samurai stuff.
Right.
They're like, oh, this
Yeah.
isn't the free samurai stuff. We advertised the paid. So
And
they gave away the paid.
Yeah, and here's a great example. 343 listened to feedback and swapped.
Mhm.
That has been a constant feedback piece to Bungie for 3+ years, basically since they separated from Activision, which ironically I still have saved bookmarks in Reddit how we all thought, myself included,
Mhm.
that was going to be like the turn that
Yeah.
oh, the monetization is going to get better, and in fact it got worse. Considerably, and so did the pacing of the. I mean, we can talk all day about like why those things changed.
Yeah.
But ultimately they did.
Well,
They got
that
worse.
is funny that part of Sony buying them is to learn how to run a games as a service game. And then I look at Destiny 2 and I'm like, I would never
It's
buy anything in
one
that
of-
game because
yeah.
I feel like it's none of it's worth it.
It doesn't respect your money. It doesn't respect your time. That's my.
It's really fun to play and it's a good campaign, but outside
Yeah.
of that, I don't like their monetization.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
and we're lucky if Witch Queen is still playable in 2 years.
God, that's
Yeah.
I mean,
crazy.
that's an unheard of thing in MMO. So that's why the whole like Sony Bungie thing doesn't bother me because I'm like, hey, there's
Not even
there
at all.
are better
They
service
could have kept it
games.
exclusive. I would not have cared. I'll tell you that right
Gaming.
now.
Like, it is the
Which is
weirdest thing, and it's nothing. If Halo did it, 343 would be roasted forever.
Yeah.
And I've seen
absolutely.
people upset, but then like they put out a good campaign again, and it's just kind of forgotten. But I bought Forsaken 2 years ago, and I can't play that campaign anymore. It's gone. I can only go to one of the areas that was in it.
I
They
bought it 2 years
completely cut
ago.
out an area.
I still haven't played it, and now I can't play it. So
It's frustrating, and it's funny because you mentioned that cycle, Jesse, and that cycle is the Destiny fan, or you know, at this point, I would argue the Bungie fan cycle of getting angry about getting new content, realizing that the content is really shallow and thin, and then getting angry, and then oh, there's a new shiny, so I'm gonna give them another chance. I mean, that was me for 6 years, so.
It's definitely the MMO cycle too. I'll tell you that much. It's always.
I mean,
the latest expansion sucks. The previous one wasn't that bad. The one before is a masterpiece, and that cycle just repeats.
ESO is
consistently.
I mean, I don't know. I don't play many MMOs, but ESO is a rare one where, in my opinion, at least post the first 2 years, even if the expansions haven't been necessarily that great, there's a ton of content. There's a ton of additional, there's a ton of additions to that beyond just the content of that expansion. So, and you never lose it. So, I mean,
maybe
I'm
I meant
playing.
just WoW because
Yeah,
I do, and I wonder with their whole ongoing narrative job hire, like, does that mean they want to get into a more permanent character you are upgrading and getting things for, or is it just strictly stays narrative? And so you've got this character and he can look like everything you've unlocked in multiplayer, but it's not a shooter, it's not a MMO light, it's just more PvE content, these set piece narrative stories you go through that come out, over time each year. Or does it end up becoming like I think the rec system and the variants in 5, like the rec cards and all that, not my favorite. But the actual guns they came up with were so dumb and fun that if there was some way I could have that as a shooter in Halo, it was like, these are better than the exotics in Destiny.
Yeah.
They're more fun to use. They're more ridiculous. It would be, that'd be so good.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned wanting kind of Schluter side thing for a while now. And at first I was like, no, but then like the way we're kind of leaning into the multiplayer narrative PvE, like why not? And
Warframe it up, except for don't have it be impossible to understand where you're supposed to go, or
Yeah, and to your point, Jesse, I mean, that's why I played so much Warzone Firefight on 5 was because the weapons were just so freaking fun. I mean, the needle rifle
in the vehicle variants.
Yes. Oh my god. So yeah, the Oni Wasp. I mean, I could name off tons of them that like the Ghost
huge lunge range.
Yeah, I mean,
Hannibal Mantis.
Yeah, like there's so many great permutations of these weapons and these vehicles. Why not bring them into, if you want to keep single player and chief stuff canon and not bring that stuff, fine. But then let us play around with some of these cool tools in PvE multiplayer
and get them into Forge so that we can
Yes.
have dumb fun modes with them. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
because
yes.
I know we've seen from leaks that the Forge mode has like pretty much every gun from 5. It's got just a ton of stuff in it that's not in the campaign.
Wait,
Yeah.
are we
So-
gone from 5?
From the leak.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah, like
Huh.
the people have used the saw and they've used like just a bunch of different things. It's all in there in the these exist files, even if the people couldn't access them.
Think they're gonna like portal it, like Battlefield Portal, kind of when they reveal it? But that
I
was a
think
cool reveal
they'll
trailer.
just give you way more toys to play with when it doesn't have to be balanced.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to balance the campaign. They didn't want to overwhelm you with too many options, and I think it worked well. There was a different thing for every situation. I felt good. There were some variants I could unlock throughout the way that were fun, like the friggin' half a sniper shotgun or the
Yeah.
goddamn sniper needler.
Yes.
I swear there was a rocket launcher machine gun too. I just can't remember.
It was the saw that had the explosive rounds.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Rad. That was so
The
freaking
answer,
rad.
that is still the best gun in almost any game ever made.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like having those types of toys for more PvE content, and they keep their PvE and their PvP separate, and that's another place Destiny has always fallen on its face.
Yeah.
Is if you raid and you do all this stuff and you just have these options in PvP, other people don't,
The last
and
word.
certain things just completely break it.
Well, and then they
so-
also they nerf snipers in universally, and therefore they suck in PvE, right? So it's just
Mhm.
this constant like tail chasing that goes in.
the amount of times they've nerfed scout rifles and made them completely useless. and
Yeah,
everything.
or,
it's just like it's
what's
just keep
the-
they separate from the start is always the way to go because
Yeah, straight up.
they're just very different things. When you're fighting a computer that can do things you can't do, and you're fighting people that do everything you can do, it just ends up being a completely different thing that I think Halo nailed really well right off the bat. And I
Right,
know
and-
people want modes and stuff, but
and that's always been the beauty of Halos. Like what separates you from another player, aside from all the network discussions, what separates you from another player is your skill, right? It's not how many levels have you leveled up. It's not which weapons have you unlocked, right? I mean, that's always been the beauty of Halo, and I think that's
Mhm.
why it was
Yep.
a genius to separate the teams from the get-go, and why if we have those kinds of modes in multiplayer, I would prefer they stick to PvE. Because that's also
you're always gonna have that arena, that core arena gameplay. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I could,
oh, excuse me.
sorry, I was gonna say one of my actually no, this is a bit of another topic. So never mind. What were you finishing?
I was just gonna say that was one of the only frustrations I had with God, what was so I can't remember. Was it Warzone Firefight where you're playing against? It was PvEVP, or because
No,
I
that was
only
just Warzone.
okay, that's
Warzone.
right.
Yeah,
So
regular Warzone.
that's
Yeah.
So that's what I didn't like about Warzone was that eventually you did run into that problem. You did run into the
Yeah.
issue where
Mhm.
if somebody spent a ton of money or spent a ton of time unlocking XXX and X, they had an inherent advantage, and
Mhm.
that's always
Or
that's-
you'd save something really cool and then get killed the instant you get
You just get run over.
Oh,
You get in your
this one
tank
I
and just
lost, and I don't have the certification for it, so I'm going to use it. Oh shit, I'm dead. Yeah, and that's what I hope they avoid for
Mhm.
whatever they're
Yeah,
doing.
and always level battle, an always level playing field because we
Yeah.
all start the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna say, I feel like the arena, three have to be kind of careful with the arena experience. I feel because especially as they get more and more into the professional scene, the esports scene, any kind of like major changes have huge rippling effects. Like say they add even one more gun into the arena sandbox, and that's a massive ripple effect. You know, and so like I hear a lot of the complaints these days about the maps, and I personally don't think so because I'm still learning the maps. I'm still
Me
learning a
too.
few jumps. I'm still learning a few spawn points, how to really use certain. I watch some of the pro matches and they use the flipping repulsor in ways where I'm like, what the heck? I didn't know you
Yeah.
could do that over here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the thing about maps is people just want stuff that looks different.
Yes.
They're not worried
Yes.
about how does it play, and that's always
Right.
my thing. Because Battlefield 5 kept adding and adding and adding, and if it was a bad map, and
Yeah.
it happened a few times, those matches go so long, and like it can take so long to get back to the ones I like.
Mhm.
Like just add a couple of really good balanced ones every year. Maybe one big team battle and a couple arena
I
that are
feel like
really
they can
good.
probably, if they really want to go crazy with the maps or people want that, they can do it for other modes, right? Like Infection or the upcoming PvE mode, or even Big Team Battle, which is in a series as Arena.
You know, people
right?
are going to lose their mind. Oh, I just want to play Slayer on everything. Like that's all they'll.
God.
Well,
Yeah.
custom games.
and a lot of that, a lot of the angst about this comes down to one of our final main topics, which is the lack of communication for a while, and the roadmap still not being a thing. Now going on a second month after their initial promise on when it would be showing up. I think we're all in the same boat where, boy, we wish we knew more.
Yeah.
We understand why we haven't gotten it, and we all really hope we get it soon, because it's this thing where they put out that patch right before the holidays, updating the playlists, completely broke everything. They went on vacation. They did not pull people from vacation. It's all a good thing.
Yep.
They had a small team working on it. It took them a while to fix. Things seem fine now on the whole. There's always going to be things that still need more fixing. But a little something and an idea of when co-op's coming.
Yeah.
An idea of when exactly would Season 2 start. Is anything going to come before Season 2 content-wise? Yeah. Is it just going to be what we have and these smaller events, like the tactical one supposedly starting up next week?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for any of us saying it's still COVID. COVID hasn't gotten better. It doesn't matter what anyone says. If the governor in my state's yelling at kids for wearing masks.
Oh my God.
It's still really tough to develop anything, and everything's still on the verge of getting a delay. And you see companies putting things out. There's been a lot of really good games put out this month, and every single one of them has still had major issues. Like Dying Light 2, I got to play through it, but it still was very clear that there's a good game here, but there's still plenty of bugs. Horizon Forbidden West, good game, plenty of bugs. Elden Ring, good game, bad performance.
Elden Ring, normal bugs.
Normal jank. Could use better performance with some things that seem basic, like the whole dynamic resolution. And,
I gotta say though, on the performance mode on a VRR TV, which by the way, I got a new TV. Woo-hoo. It feels great. It feels amazing.
I had no issues. So I made sure to turn off VRR and turn it on and play, and I could say, okay, I can feel a little bit here. Even with it off, it's not bad. But like we're in this point, and Dan knows it better than myself or Aarsal ever will. With developing is really hard, especially when you can't be together in person. Everything's still really pushed back and delayed, and I do think that missing their initial January date has made them really careful about giving any commitments at all.
Yeah, and to that point, Jesse, I go back to that Popovich tweet, because it was literally, it hit both those points. As let's say you had something in mind for February. Well, if you had to shift your priority because you had to do, sorry, cat's yelling. If you had to shift your priority because you had to do a bunch of bug fixing, then that takes away resources for what you were going to put out in February. Yeah. And so that shifts further back. And so I think you're right, Jesse. I think they're just a little bit gun shy. I don't know. I with everything else going on in the world right now, with everything else going on with my work and personal life, it's like the amount of games that we're getting in Game Pass. I don't need to play Halo every waking second. I've already hit my 100, right? So like, it's the type of game, and this is me, the fact that I already plan on coming back as soon as there's, as soon as you guys want to, or as soon as there's new content, or as soon as the next season hit. To me, that says it's succeeded, because there's plenty of games. I've said plenty of times, I have ADHD, and so like I'm bouncing from game to game anyway, and when I play like Battlefield 2042, I haven't played that in at least a month, and it's because the foundation just wasn't good enough to make me want to come back when it's fixed. Like eventually I will go back. There's a lot of work that needs to be there, but it's just not on the forefront of my mind. It's not in it's not in my mental back catalog of things. Hey, I need to go back and play that. Whereas like Halo is always there. Forza Horizon 5 is always there.
It's a game I'll always have installed.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll go play Dark Souls. I'll go finish my second run through Wasteland 3 or whatever, and then any of the other games that I'm bouncing through, or any of the games that have like shown up in March's Game Pass, right?
God,
But
yeah.
eventually, the moment there's something new, or the moment there's a draw, I'll be back in Halo. So
Yeah.
like it doesn't need.
Mhm.
I think that there's this obsessive need for. There are some gamers that feel like they always have to play this game, and there
Mhm.
always has to be some sort of obsessive like stream of content, and it's partly to blame. Like games like Fortnite are partly to blame, but then you have to think about it. That is a how many person team working on a single game?
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
all they do. And I know that 343 is large. They're what 300 something people, but they're still like just like Apex, just like Fortnite, even just like Rainbow Six Siege. Like this is 343's first foray into this type of game, and just like all those three examples I just said, and just like thousands of others, none of them got it right out of the
Yeah.
gate. And
Yeah, like you remember Apex. Remember how bad
Yeah.
Apex's was. Remember how bad Sea of Thieves first season.
Thieves, yeah.
PUBG
I mean,
stuff, like all of it was bad at the
you
start.
Apex
No
was
one
funny.
fucking nailed it
every
right off the
example.
bat.
Yeah, you literally go through every example, and you'll find that that's the case across the board, and that time will tell how well 343 adjusts.
Yep.
But that's why I'm not sweating. I'm not
Mhm.
worried. It doesn't even I don't waste. It doesn't take up any rent in my it doesn't hang out in my head about
Yep.
something to worry about, because hey, there's far more important things to worry about. But
There's
more
no shortage of
no
games,
short of
and there's
content.
no shortage of things
honestly.
to worry about.
Right.
And you can
And
always jump in Halo. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you said, like I have a friend who's like, "Hey, you want to play Halo time?" I'm like, yeah, sure. We played
And it's-
an hour randomly.
And it's weird to see. I don't know if you guys agree, but it's weird to see people who say, "Oh, well, I don't care about progression, or I don't care about unlocking this," but then they complain about progression in
Yep.
Halo Infinite. I'm
Yep.
like,
Yep.
that seems pretty paradoxical to me. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't want to just say hypocritical, because it's just it is, but it's like those are conflicting ideals. But in reality, I mean, give them time. This is their first foray into a full live service game, and like we all have said,
Mhm.
every single one of those examples that we mentioned took
Apex.
hell,
The first month was so widely praised. I remember everyone saying this is an amazing game, and then like a switch flipped or something, and everyone started bashing Respawn.
Yeah. And to Respawn's credit, they said, "Hey, we're not Epic,
Yeah.
we're not Fortnite, we're not
Mhm.
going to."
They didn't think it was going to
be
be this big either. They
Yeah,
were not
exactly.
prepared.
Exactly, and to some extent, 20 million in how long? What it was, what, a month and a half when they announced that it was 20 million players on Halo Infinite. Even that is larger than Halo's ever had.
Yeah.
Like, period.
Mhm.
So I think it's one of those things that people just need to have some freaking grace, have some some understanding of how other games come out, especially direct analogs. I mean, hell, and there are plenty of games that don't have anywhere near the success
Mhm.
as Halo Infinite has, that have similar issues, and they're dead. Look at Anthem.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
Sad days. I really wanted them to bring it back.
Yeah, it was very fun to play. It just
Yeah.
messed up some of the
Your
keep
brother,
playing it stuff.
your brother's last comment made me laugh. It doesn't take up any green moderator posts in your head. Yes, that's very true.
Mhm. Yeah, so those were the main topics, really. It's we're gonna always want to go. Sometimes it might be a little lighter, and we might hit non-Halo things from time to time. We'll be expanding it, but later this month we do want to go weekly, every Friday night, with a spoiler cast essentially for each episode of the TV show. So, and that is
It'll be
thankfully looking
interesting.
like it's going up in most major markets around the globe. This is the push for Paramount Plus, and it's going to be
I'm
on
waiting to subscribe
a
until
lot
like
of different places.
the day comes out, just to let them know, be like, I subscribed for this show and this
Right.
show only. All right.
Well, and then
And I
go
feel
watch
good
Twilight
about
now.
it because they've already done. It's obviously they've got enough signups with people saying that they did season 2. Because like Grubb said, the renewal for season 2 isn't just about quality of the show. It's also hitting their metrics on getting a younger audience, because Paramount and CBS trends very old.
Mhm.
Their biggest show is like 1888, which is all about freaking Sam Elliott wanting to really badly be a not gay cowboy. I don't know if you saw, he had an
Jesse,
interview
yes, I
with
did.
Mark
That was
Maron today where he was
so
flipping out about.
disappointing.
Really?
Yeah. He's
God.
very upset that Power of the Dog was about repressed homosexuality and the.
Can we have one old white dude who doesn't disappoint us, please? That'd be wonderful.
How about Chris Christopherson? Is he still cool?
I think so.
John Carpenter?
Hey, what's his name? Woody Nelson. He's super cool, right? So,
Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson.
Woody Nelson is his
God, dude.
toy brother.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Aarsal? I agree. Good point.
We're all super tired.
If we want to get to them, we've got 3 community questions.
Let's do it.
Let me-
Yes. One second.
All right.
Oh yes, I was gonna say, Jesse.
Go
I
for it.
heard that the showrunner left, and so the show is dead. Is that not true?
Oh, yes. It's almost like the showrunner leaves every show.
Huh.
You know, like even a very popular show that did great, like Loki, has a new showrunner for season 2. You know, it's just sort of a normal thing when someone spends many years working on one product that they had in their head, and now they're like, okay, it's good, it's ready to go. I'm gonna go. I got another idea in my head I want to do.
Yeah, I know I'm an idealist, but I would love to see a day where staff changes don't automatically mean the end of the world for
Concern?
anything
Yeah.
Xbox related.
People don't keep calling for fired and stuff. It always feels pretty off to me.
Yeah, that too.
But-
Like you should never ask for somebody to be fired.
Yep.
Mhm.
Stop.
All right, so you don't have to be a member of this if you want to ask us a question because we're not big enough. But if you do like us, you can go to patreon.com/XboxEra. Even for $1 a month, it is the best way to support the channel. Helps us do it more and more. Every little bit helps. You know, $1, $3 tier. The higher tiers, you can get cool swag that Pre-Drag and Psycho Mechanico come up with. But if you want to ask us a question every week that we're having a show, I put up I put up in the thread for You Had Me at Halo and ask for community questions. And the first one we have is from Anorexic, who's a wonderful man, from what I know. Anorexic, maker of Omega Rally Championship, of which you get a free code if you sign up even on the $1 tier.
Bingo bango.
Hello, Spartans. As we all know, it is a bit unrealistic to ask for new maps and new modes at this point. But I'm thinking a daily and weekly featured custom game as a hopper playlist could be the most realistic thing on the horizon. Custom games is 95% there, and the only one feature missing is a presetting a player's equipment, though it is doable in training mode. Those hoppers would get people to check in daily and weekly to see what's new. I have a feeling many would try a round or two to see if it's fun. One thing Fortnite does so well is creates modes, skins, and weapons based on the current trending games and IPs. Yes, they're great at ripping things off. This week, we can all agree that Elden Ring is everything. Many play where you come in to attack and then roll to avoid counterattacks. So how about a custom Slayer mode with swords and thrusters along with increased shields? Call the mode Ancient Ring as a nod to the Halo rings.
Ancient
When the
Halo.
Spider-Man movie came out, Oddball with grapple and swords and spike grenades would have been great. You can allow for sprint and equipment usage with the Oddball in custom games, which would make for some amazing chases through the map. When Crossfire X came out, having the commando and sidekick with realistic damage, no shields, no equipment, no motion action, reduced jump, and only one life for 3 team Slayer rounds could have been interesting. Anything Crossfire X is not interesting. When Prey, the new Predator movie, comes out, active camo, spike grenades, and swords for all. Not all of them will be home runs. Some will be love-hate relationships like the shoddy teleporters.
Some people
don't appreciate genius. You know, some of these might become classics like Team Rockets. The daily custom game playlists can be straightforward ideas like 12v12 tactical Slayer on Deadlock, snipers and shotties, headshots only, Team Rockets, etc. Stuff that doesn't push the cheese envelope far enough to scare off serious no-nonsense players, rotated daily to keep things fresh. So my question is, and I apologize for the length here, please don't, it was very good. And no one here is scared of some length. Using the current game modes and weapons available, which custom game would you design for the entire world to play if it were featured for a week? What sort of no-nonsense playlist would you like to appear, though, as a daily custom game? Start with you, Dan.
Tag. So one person has hammers and they have thrusters and nobody else has anything. But you just have to, well, you maybe have some sort of gun, I guess, but you just have to run around kind of like Invasion, except unlike Invasion. The moment the dude hits somebody, they no longer have the hammer. The hammer passes on to the tag.
Maybe like a weaker thruster or something, or like a weaker disruptor rather than
Yeah,
gun.
something. Maybe
Yeah,
like
that'd
a weaker repulsor. Yeah, that'd
Yeah,
be cool.
yeah.
See, we're fleshing this out.
Yeah.
I've thought about this actually. Tag would be rad. I think that'd be awesome. But I don't know if that fits the no nonsense. You know. Oh, that's just for the playlist. Which sort of no nonsense playlist would you like to appear as a daily custom? I mean, shoddy snipes for the second part of the question. They're boring, but like we don't have.
Yeah, the daily stuff could be more boring and just things people want but don't have to be there all the time. You can sort of be, hey, you get to go through and everyone's going to play this, and you know,
Or shoddy portals.
No,
You take my answer.
We already know yours because we've lived that nightmare. All right.
What weird ass thing would you want, Aarsal?
Well, my first initial impression was going to be teleporting shotguns. In fact, I was experimenting a little bit with just shotguns without shields in general in Halo Infinite. It's actually kind of fun, but I couldn't get everyone to spawn with the thruster. But man, I'm trying to think. Honestly, I feel like the vehicles, they're fast in Halo Infinite, and they drive, even though they sometimes drive crazy, they still drive pretty damn well. A vehicle-focused game mode would be really cool. Maybe not on the current Big Team Battle maps because they're like not too vehicle friendly. Like you're gonna flip like every 2 seconds. But on something a little more flat or whatnot, like basically what we played, Rocket Race. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the old school the Halo Reach Rocket Race maps.
Yeah.
Remember those, like where they'd have these like insane curvatures and it looked like more like a roller coaster? Something like that would be cool.
In terms of no nonsense playlist, my initial impression was probably 2s. I'd say 2v2s.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, the shoddy snipers is the only thing that pops in my head because I really did not play Halo multiplayer much before this. Something crazier, I would like to be able to have like a big team battle where there's just a lot of vehicles, just a ton, not the whole, like just something where you get a tank, a wraith, a couple of banshees, like they just go nuts. You got wasps, like just tons and tons of crazy shit. Good weapons all around the map to try and counteract them. I've always felt a little limited in big team because they are going for the balance of everything a bit.
Yeah.
And I would like a big dumb not balanced mode for crazy fun. That's not Fiesta where it's just weapon based, but it's also vehicle based more.
Like everyone has Titans kind of thing.
And like low mats vehicles. That'd be rad.
All right. Number 2 from the Podrick Payne, aka my brother. Get up on screen. It is weird hosting and producing, but it's working. Podrick Payne, bidding you all a good evening from my grunt propaganda tower. Do you guys see future DLC where there could be brute mini-bosses riding a mount at you and one-hit kill you with a giant gravity hammer? Yeah, neither do I. I only ask this because I was goaded to buy the descriptor for this podcast. Because I was goaded to buy the descriptor for this podcast and couldn't come up with anything I would want Halo to borrow from Elden Ring. So I guess my real question is, which one of you came up with that idea? And I request that the rest of you shame him, unless it was Jesse, which in that case, great idea, Jess. I think when Infinite gets multiplayer, they should make us festering bloody fingers and passwords to play with each other.
I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it was my idea about what Halo could take from Elden Ring, but it was more the setup of Elden Ring's open world in comparison to Halo's. Dumbass.
Yeah.
So there. I've answered the question myself. God damn it. We'd have a better one from someone who's not a big dumb idiot named Good Old Collingwood. And Good Old Collingwood does ask an actual question. I hope. Hello, Halo followers. I've been seeing a few YouTube videos recently calling Halo Infinite a failure. Well, that's because YouTubers just say shit to get you to click on it. I can only assume that these videos are commentating on the lack of updates in material lately from 343 Industries. Of course, this would all be solved tomorrow if 343 Industries introduced a bit of crunch into the workplace. Of course, 343 are not going to do that, but we come up against the deadlines of having issues fixed, as well as getting new features completed. Short of removing management, which I doubt will happen, what is the solution? Time.
Yeah. And I want to push back on the idea that this is all management's fault. I think that's something that gets regurgitated with, not necessarily a ton of credence. And also,
Or Clearwater.
Or yeah, exactly.
Clearwater?
Sorry.
Creedence Clearwater.
Credence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Creedence
the
Clearwater
first name did
Revival.
not do much of a.
Yeah, so you probably don't know that band up there in Canadian.
Okay. But I feel like time, but not necessarily time, just experience. Once they get used to the cadence of the release schedules, once they get used to their tools, to their whatever the heck it is, whatnot, eventually they're gonna reach like I'm looking for a word, I just can't find it. It's like when you're comfortable with something, when you release something on a regular basis, when you're comfortable with it, blah, blah, blah. Cadence, yeah, but like they're gonna reach their something.
Their nadir. We're talking about
they'll find an equilibrium between everything.
Exactly.
All be balanced.
And I feel like it will happen. Why? Because we've seen it happen like 3-4 times already with other games that are very similar in scope and idea. It's funny though, because I've seen it also not happen at places like Blizzard and World of Warcraft. Every expansion, the developers are like, okay, don't worry guys, we learned from our stuff. We're not going to take a year in between. They take longer. So I'm hoping that won't happen. But in general, no, it's just experience. Just get used to what they're doing, build a good schedule, build a good cadence, and that's the only real solution.
Yeah, I mean, I basically ranted on this earlier with comparisons to Apex and all that jazz. Yeah. And all those games, same thing. Just took that developer time to understand, how long it takes to build the type of content that draws players, and 343 will find that. I don't have any doubt. Aarsal over there talking to himself.
No, it's like when you find a good something, like an urge, or what's it called? Dang it. A good pace. Yeah, I think maybe that's what I was looking for. Kind of a small word. Those Wordle, it might be tomorrow's day.
I was thinking it was a good word, not like a real basic one.
Yeah, not like a 4-letter.
No, I think it was something else.
6-point Scrabble word.
Find a good. God dang it.
I won't find a good god dang it. I refuse. Yeah, it's really going to come down to them just figuring it out, and that has happened with everyone through time.
Yep. And also an important point to note too, all those games that we mentioned, by the way, came out before a pandemic. They came out before work from home, before when people were building games locally. So that's something else that people need to take a breath and remember, that all those games that we all mentioned that took time had the advantage of not being built during a pandemic. I don't care what anybody says, that is still a very real thing that we're.
What if Santa said it?
Santa's not real, man.
That's why it would be an incredible thing. He became real just to say it.
Anyway. One thing I wanted to mention is, because he brings up a point which is paraded a lot in YouTube, in our own Discord. I got like legitimately mad for one of the first few times recently, where basically people have this impression where it's like all the problems are management, even though the problems aren't that major. They overblow the problems.
I can't imagine anyone saying that.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then they're like, 343 needs to reshuffle management. Imagine you're working on a video game, or you're working on a project, even not a video game, just a project. It releases and is one of the best projects, if not the best project your team has ever made, your company has ever made, in the history of its company, in the history of its whatever the heck you're working on. And then people suddenly want to replace you? What the heck is that? Halo Infinite has problems. Yes, it does. It has issues. Communication right now has been kind of small. They shouldn't have called that a mid-season update. That was a mistake. Hopefully they recognize that, because that implied different things. But holy crap, they released the best Halo game. This is my personal opinion, obviously. All-round best Halo game, and suddenly people want to call for their heads? It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's one of the most successful games that Xbox has put out, period.
Seriously.
So yeah, I completely agree.
Well. It looks well. Like
the core and the foundation are solid. The rest will just get better. But the idea that and forgive me for saying this, but I can't help but feel like some of this is because Bonnie Ross is a woman, and I think that's ridiculous.
That's been happening for years. I feel a lot of it.
Oh, it absolutely has. We've seen the misogynist bullshit, and it, like you said, Aarsal, it's like it's one of the most successful games Xbox has ever made already. So to call for somebody's head is just fucking stupid. I mean, it's just tell me you're detached from reality without telling me you're detached from reality, right?
Straight up.
and beyond that, this idea that again, we're in a pandemic. Look at every single big game that has come out in the past year alone. I mean, we're still talking about Battlefield having tons of issues. We're still talking.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about games that typically release in some of the most polished states, not releasing in polished states. I mean,
and these games are delayed too, by the way.
These
Horizon
games
Forbidden
are also
West and Elden
delayed,
Ring
yeah.
were massively delayed. Yeah,
exactly. So like the fact that these games were also delayed, and also keep in mind too, both games that we're talking about don't have the scope of Halo Infinite, and by that I mean they don't have a single player and a multiplayer
Mhm.
full PvP arena component. Again, people can down talk that all they want. Jesus Christ! But in reality, those are you're talking about systems built upon systems that don't exist in those other games.
Yep.
So, and that's not to belittle the content that those games put out. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just simply saying that there are multiple moving targets that do not exist in those other games. And so the fact that Halo launched in the state that it did arguably is a testament compared to some of these other big directly and analogous games like Battlefield. I think people just, I don't know.
And it was a Battlefield that only was multiplayer.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't even have the campaign side, and they still launched at an abysmal state. And I don't blame the developers. I blame these arbitrary deadlines that people are forcing them to meet. But
what game just released into version 1.0? I don't care if they call it 2.0. Cyberpunk just released.
Right.
Yeah.
What would have been the game probably at launch?
Exactly. Yeah, gamers just need to get a reality check. Chill out.
We're not calling out everyone.
Right,
we're calling out 99.
We're talking about the toxic people.
We're talking about the vast majority of you.
If you identify as a gamer, I'm talking about you. I mean, just saying
and
those specific words.
Travis in chat misspelled it horribly, but was the word you were thinking of rhythm?
Yes, that was it. Yeah, it was it. Rhythm. Yes.
See, you got it right, even though it's pretty sure it's RHYTHM. Some word.
Okay. Thank you, Travis.
Jeez.
Okay, sorry, I have to get that rant out of the way after this last week.
We've got one last question here. No Abe around. What do you know? It's actually going to be a quick one. And I tease, I hope his cat's okay.
Yeah,
and we still went an hour and a half, so not
yeah.
quick.
It's not short, and it's been an hour and 14. All right.
Oh, you're right, because
one
it's goal time.
from Mortania. Greetings, guys and cats. Everyone seems to be very focused on the PvP aspect when it comes to the live service part of a Halo game. But I think they should lean into the PvE harder. Both more campaign content, but perhaps also lean into different PvE modes and maybe even evolve the game into more of an MMO light. Do you guys think they should perhaps go for something more like Destiny with the PvE side of the game? Hugs, Mortania.
Hugs.
That was most of our show.
Yeah.
We all agree with you.
Yep.
100%.
Yep. And I
my
think,
favorite part of Halo will always be the PvE.
Yeah. And I think 343 already understand that based on that hire, right? So,
one thing I feel like they could do, and this is kind of out of the left wing, left something.
Field?
Left field. There you go.
Jeez, you're more tired than I am.
I need tea. All right, my brother was supposed to bring it like 30 minutes ago. Oh, that's why they knocked. Sorry. I'm piecing things together now.
Oh,
I feel like with Halo Infinite as a platform, right, as a space for 10 years, how unrealistic is it that they'll be like, hey, you guys, if you guys want to help us develop a mode for Halo Infinite that's like using Halo Infinite as a space, but it's almost completely separate, like a shooter mode, right, like Destiny or something like that. And I feel like they're already kind of doing this with CA and whatever mode they're working on, but like even to the next level where it's like, this is our base, we're working on the PvP and the campaign, right, the arena, the big team battle, the thing. But if you want to take this and do something, cool with it, go for it.
Do you want to do that Treyarch? What about you, Sledgehammer?
Yeah. I mean, you're
It's
tired of
really
being
weird to
boring,
think of just how
nonfiction.
big. They're going to have 3 publishing arms.
It's insane.
underneath.
With a ton of insane talent and IP under them. In the thought of these different devs that are like, hey, we would really love to make something in this space. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
And that becoming a thing as time moves forward is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, we're already seeing that with the rumor with New Vegas too, right? which spiritual New Vegas 2, not actual
Yeah,
New Vegas
yeah.
2, but Obsidian, asking a team within Obsidian asking Todd and team at BGS if they'd be able to do something. And I think we saw kind of the seeds planted with that a couple of years back when after the initial acquisitions in 2018, we started hearing about people from Rare showing the guys at State of Decay how to deal with water tech, and we saw
Tim up on stage saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, if you need me to make anything, we can make anything.
I'll make stuff in Excel." Was still one of the best moments of
that was
that
great.
E3.
That was great.
Tim Schafer and anything is just golden.
And after Psychonauts 2, boy, I cannot wait to see what they
I
make.
still
Oh,
need to
God.
play it. I'm on the first game. I just got to finish it.
Oh man, Psychonauts 2
I've never played Psychonauts 1 because I couldn't get through the meat circus. I played some of it. I didn't finish it. I was just like, I don't want to do this. I'm playing too much World of Warcraft and shit nowadays anyways by the time I played it. So, but yeah, it's
perfect.
phenomenal. Yeah. It's one of the best platformers
of Xbox is honestly better than it's ever been. And
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
get how people don't see that.
Yeah, the doom and gloom is just, it's like, what
they're
do you
not
guys
talking
people-
right now enough, so everything's bad. Shut up,
Yeah.
Xbot.
Yeah, they just had 2 years of like pretty consistently great releases, and 2020 had a ton of releases considering we just hit pandemic. So
It's funny seeing
Anyway.
all these people like online comments were like, yeah, 2021 is a bit of a dry year. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I guess you don't own an Xbox. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, it was dry in the second half because Sony went hard in the first half and then
Yep.
light in the second half with
yeah,
only
they had
Deathloop,
9
which-
months where they didn't have it released. So I mean, I
Mhm.
guess if you only had a PlayStation, yeah, it would seem that way. But
And it's
I mean,
affordable, right? Like Sony
Yeah, I
can
mean-
make the best games in the world, but I can't flip and afford them. And very few people can, I feel, like all of them.
right, I mean, you look at, a lot of people around where I live just had their rent go up 25%. It's like Game Pass is such a timely blessing for gamers that anybody who's pushing against it clearly are not doing it in good
And the
faith,
Series S,
because,
right?
even
and
if
the
you don't
Series
like,
S actually exists, unlike the PS5 digital.
Yep.
Yeah.
Paper
and
friends.
exactly, and even the cost of entry, if you stream to your iPad, iPhone, Android device, whatever, it's cheaper than anything else. So it's just this perfectly timed subscription service during what eventually became a pandemic, a ton of jobs lost, and then now we're facing a false inflation. So
Yep.
it's frustrating, but yeah, and to that point, I think it's funny that even though they're so huge, once the ABK deal goes through, people are still wanting more, myself included. But that's just because of the additional value to Game Pass, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Anyway.
the nice thing with Halo going forward is I feel like as long as I got Game Pass, I probably never have to spend a penny to keep getting content out of my favorite series. So, but yeah, look at that. Look, we are an hour and 20 minutes or so actually live. And that was
Nick
it.
just showed up on the chat for a second.
Hello, Nick. How's it going, mate?
Oi, bruv. Are you enjoying the Elden Ring code I got you? I'm very good at that, by the way. I've gotten pretty good. I know how to gently talk to PR. Hey, you want your game talked about on our biggest thing, the podcast?
It's probably like it's too hard. I can't play it. It's just it's just a little bit too hard.
Is that Nick? Oh, that's what I expect to hear from Nick on the main podcast on Saturday, where we will be having the 3 Nintendogs and an Xbox baby. We've got Jeff Grubb and Mike Minotti of GamesBeat both coming on the show. And Nick, I got to get this. So Nick came up with the name, and then I had a really stupid idea in my head. What I wanted the thumbnail to look like, and I'm extremely... Nothing in life brings me more pleasure than this. And Nick took a picture for this thumbnail and everything.
God.
I love it.
So terrifying.
Oh, it's so good. I'm sorry to John. Second Mechanical is a great guy.
Everything else
the best
is
as the
fine.
ball baby. Yeah, but Nick making the Ted Danson face directly from the 3 Men and a Baby poster. Oh, it's so good.
Everything
So that'll
else
be
is fine.
on-
It's just John's head on the baby is just terrifying.
Mhm.
He's so angry.
Especially it's an angry looking face, and and poor Mike looks like a bit of a hunchback, but it is what it is.
No,
All right.
yeah.
With
Yes.
that, I'm going to leave it up, and I'm going to lead us out. Aarsal, you want to give a shout out to all our friendos?
Actually, if you could give it, and I can follow your lead for the next time, so I know I know how it looks like.
Yeah.
Because you've been doing a great job right now.
Yeah, so pretty much the way it goes is what I brought up before, which is patreon.com/XboxEra. It is the best way to support us if you like what we do, liking, commenting, subscribing here on the stream and everything we do. It helps us get visibility, but for actual funding, we don't do clickbait. We don't do any hot dog shit. You don't have to say that part, Ursula.
Okay.
We try to keep it looking nice and way more professional than it ever should. Like, look at this animation that Predrag made for me in a second. You need to just
God,
make
my
this
man.
one. He made 3 of them for Coffee with Cabeza, You Had Me at Halo, and the Xbox Era podcast. You want more cool shit like that? Patreon.com/Xbox Era is the best way, even $1. We've got a bunch of tiers. You can see the bigger tiers get you some cool Xbox Era and Coffee with Cabeza and You Had Me at Halo branded swag, depending on the different quarters.
I got a
But
cool
yeah,
coffee
thank you.
cup.
And we were going to have a Coffee with Cabeza coffee cup, but they keep rejecting it
Oh, that's
for
cool.
copyright.
Punks.
It's an automated thing, and they're like, "Oh, we'll fix it. Sorry about that. Submit it again." We submit it again, just gets rejected. But I digress. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Ursula,
Yeah.
for being here
Thank you.
alongside me.
Absolutely.
Boy, that was fun.
Also,
I
I have a
enjoyed it.
feeling we might be back next week because personally, I just have like this gut feeling, and so does Abe. Next week's the week. We're gonna get that content
Yeah.
drop.
We get we get a roadmap. We get a big update or something. If we do, keep an eye on the feeds, the Twitter feeds, this feed.
Mhm.
We'll be back. Other than that, it'll most likely be 2 weeks, and if then after that, the Halo show starts.
Mhm.
And then we'll most likely be weekly with Friday night spoiler cast. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for joining me. It's
Mhm.
really fun as always. We should
Absolutely.
never skip a show, I say.
Yeah.
And we will
Agreed.
see you guys either next week, and if not, in 2 weeks.
Bye.
See you all.
Oh, man.
I'm just going to leave it here and not click bye. I'm kidding. Goodbye.